Hello everyone and welcome to my review of Black Desert Online. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, we're gonna cover it all. Yes, we will. Just a disclaimer, I have almost about 1,000 hours in this game, and I consider that, sufficient amount of time to review it. So, let's get started with the good. The combat. This game has one of the most awesome and unique action combat systems I've ever seen. It's fast-paced, it's challenging, and it has a lot of depth, and it can get intense and rewarding at times. For new players, this might seem a bit much, but with time, you get used to it, you get better. Each class has its own set of skills which can be activated by pressing a certain key or a combination of keys. For example, if you press F, that might cause your character to kick. If you press W, which is to move forward, plus F, that's different from just using F alone. And Shift plus F is another entirely different skill. I know that sounds kind of simple, but it all flows together in a nice way. When you have a forward movement with a key that's supposed to kick, you do a forward kick. If you do a backwards movement with a key that's supposed to throw a spell out, you will jump backwards and then throw that spell out. It all flows nicely together. It's basically like playing a fighting game where each move needs to be activated in order to pull off certain combos, and it needs to be executed in the correct order. There are entire videos for each class on what combos are the best for PvP and PvE. These can be long strings of combos of up to 10 to 20 spells in a row, or 10 to 20 skills in a row. It really is just like a fighting game. There are up to 10 different types of CC you can inflict on another player or enemy. These include stiffness, stun, knockback, floating, bound, knockdown, freezing, grapple, air smash, down smash. Each CC skill has a hidden value of 1, except for stiffness, which is 0.7, but it's not really important. Basically, each time you succeed at a CC, your opponent gains the value of that CC, most of them being 1. When that CC counter reaches 2, your opponent is given 5 seconds of CC immunity. This is done to prevent CC spam in PvP and PvE. In addition, there are many different ways of blocking your enemy's attacks, including forward guard, shield guard, super armor, and invincibility frames or iframes, and so on. To prevent these from being overpowered, the game allows grabs or grapples to go through every type of defense that I just mentioned, except for the invincibility frames, iframes. So the combat is fantastic overall. The classes. Now, there are 23 different classes in this game, including Warrior, uses a sword and shield, Hashashin, which is, just think Prince of Persia, Sage, uses basically time magic, Ranger, Archer, Guardian, Sorceress, Nova, Dark Knight, Ninja, Valkyrie, Witch, and Wizard, and class called Lan that fights with like a pendulum and blades and can fly around, a Berserker, a Tamer that summons like this big wolf dog to fight with them, Shy, which is like this character that's mainly used for for professions and for getting your this called life skills up. You have Striker, which is just he just basically beats the shit out of stuff. Musa and Meiwa, they're more like they use katanas and blades and that sort of thing. Mystic, which is kind of like the female version of a striker, and now we have Corsair, which is kind of the pirate class, with a unique ability to basically use a water lasso to move around. In this game, basically there are no tanks and there are no healers. This does not have the classic trinity of DPS, tank, healer. That just doesn't exist in this game. The only sort of thing that I can think of is that a Shy in special circumstances in PvP can be used to heal people, and Yeah, but besides that, that's pretty much it. Any group of classes will most likely be successful at defeating something as long as they are the correct level and they have good gear and they have potions. You know, most people just carry potions around with them, and that's enough to satisfy, you know, the healing component. There are tier lists for what people consider to be meta for PvE and for PvP. But honestly, most classes can get away with doing well just by having good gear, knowing how to play your class. The most interesting thing about classes in this game is that there are two entirely unique set of skills your character has depending on if you go the awakening or the succession route. So you play the game and you get to level 56 or so. Now you can do a quest that will unlock the ability to choose one of these paths. You can switch later, but just because you picked a path doesn't mean you can't switch later, but you can only be in one state at a given time. Awakening will completely change what weapon you've been using since the beginning of the game, and it'll unlock new abilities. Succession will have you keep the same weapons you've been using since the beginning, but allow access to some flashier versions of the skills that you've been using. For example, the warrior starts out by using a sword and shield. You will use this all the way until level 56. At that point, you can choose to go the succession path and continue to use the sword and shield with some flashier skills, or you can go the awakening path and wield a giant two-handed sword like Guts from Berserk, which is pretty freaking badass. To be clear though, just because you choose the awakening path doesn't mean you won't ever pull out your sword and shield again, because you still have access to those skills as well. Those are called pre-awakening abilities. The abilities that you've been using since the beginning of the game. You just don't, you know, obviously you don't have access to succession. In terms of the world and world building, the world honestly is breathtakingly beautiful. It's full of interesting places and enemies to fight. There are gorgeous cities, mushroom forests, large bodies of water you can travel on, sunsets in the distance, vast deserts, mountains, moonlight, and weather effects such as rain pouring down in real time and affecting your character, and so much more. I also love that each NPC has their own set of voice-acted phrases, and some greet you saying things like "Welcome to Velia," and if you're in Shakatu Village, you'll talk to the guy who has access to the bank, and he'll say, "The Shakatu's Merchants Guild is the best of its kind in all of Valencia." And so I just thought that was something really neat. I like little things like that. When you add that in the game, I think it gives the game some life, it gives it some flavor. And next, I want to talk about the music. Honestly, it has a solid soundtrack overall. The combat music is engaging and it's fun to listen to. Each city has its own lively theme. Oh, and yeah, so one of the classes called Shy, it can play music on their instruments, like real music, like live in game, similar to a bard in Final Fantasy XIV. Excuse me. You'll often hear Shies in the game playing music in the city and before world bosses, which is pretty awesome. You can play songs like "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher," and you know pretty much anything else. The graphics. Okay, so honestly, this game on ultra settings or like the highest settings, it's incredibly appealing to the eyes, especially the amount of jiggle physics. There really isn't much else to be said. Look up some videos of BDO or Black Desert Online on the highest settings, or just give the game a try for yourself and see how beautiful it really is. And speaking of being beautiful, the character creator screen. This game has legit one of the best character creators I've ever seen in video games. You can edit everything on your character. You can make beautiful looking characters, or you can make funny and wacky looking ones and downright ugly ones. And yes, boys, there is a boob and ass slider. One of the coolest aspects about the game, though, is that there's a community-driven character creation gallery. This means someone can make a character preset and then upload it to the community gallery. then people vote on who has the best preset, and these end up available for download from other players. Basically, if someone makes a character that looks awesome, you can copy it and even edit it to make it your own. So the next thing I want to talk about is professions and worker empire. Really fun, albeit slightly grindy, as most things in this game, and there are interesting professions. So, from sailing to cooking to gathering to woodcutting to mining and so on and so forth, to breeding horses and all sorts of stuff. And so those are fun. There's a nice progression path. It does get very grindy, but you make money, doing the professions, and that's one of the main ways of making money in the game. There's also access to something called a worker empire. And when you play BDO, you'll notice that there are nodes everywhere when you open the map up. So these nodes that you've been visiting throughout the game will allow you to, once you gain access to them through something called contribution points, you'll be able to employ workers to harvest local resources at that node. Those resources will then get sent to your bank, and then you can either sell these resources or use them to craft things or use them to cook with. And it's actually a really awesome idea, and I had a lot of fun using this system. I thought it was pretty cool, and then the different tiers to your workers, and you can have different types of workers. Goblins are fast, and humans are a little slower, and there are other types of workers who are even slower than them, but they have a longer endurance, so that you don't have to feed them as often, for example. And so another really cool thing about this game is the world bosses. Now, that's a pretty cool feature. So every 3 to 4 hours or so, there is a new world boss that spawns, sometimes even more frequently. There are 2 weekly bosses which drop items that are super valuable. I can't remember the exact price, but I remember it's either 8 bill or so. I think it's 7 to 8 billion, which is actually a lot in the game. And one of them is a massive dragon. The other is a massive sea monster that you have to depart from a beach about 30 minutes prior to it spawning to even reach it in time. I remember the first time I did this, I thought this was the most epic thing I've ever done in a video game. It really gave you that sense of adventure. I mean, we were all at, I think it was Velia Beach, with my guild, and we said, oh man, the boss is spawning soon, like, everybody come over here quickly, like, and someone had a boat from our guild, and we all just hopped on their boat or ship or whatever, and we drove out for like, it took like 15-20 minutes just to get there, and you see all these other ships lining up at Velia, just getting ready to go fight this boss, and we're all driving out there to do this one thing. Everybody's trying to get the loot, and you get there. The boss fight itself is kind of weird because you basically just shoot at him with a bunch of cannons, like thousands of people are just shooting at him at once, and you take him down that way, and you have a chance of getting it. So it was awesome, especially the first time you did it. I think especially the first time. So now let's move on to the bad. We talked about the good, and now it's time to acknowledge the bad. The story is bad. Yep. Most people don't play BDO for the story. I mean, that's not much of a surprise, I'm guessing. Most players spam the next button so fast while playing through the MSQ that the keybind they use probably chipped off. I'd be surprised if most people even knew there was a story to this game. The only thing people know is that there is a Navi, like from Legend of Zelda, called the Black Spirit that randomly annoys you and may or may not be your friend. I tried to pay attention to this mess of a story, but honestly the quest dialogue is so fragmented and boring that I'd rather skip through. I initially tried to pay attention. I did so for the first 30 or 40 levels, and then I realized that this is a shit show, and I stopped paying attention. Then, towards the end, when the Black Spirit, towards the end, about level 56, 60, I saw the Black Spirit was, it got a little more interesting. You know, there was a bit of a twist, but overall, honestly, it kind of sucks. It needs work. It needs to be better. Class balance. So it's a bit of an issue when it comes to group PvP, with many people, many players, as when I remember when I was playing, whereas and even to this day are calling for nerfs to the wizard class because of its ability to inflict massive amounts of AoE damage in node wars. There were even guilds entirely composed of almost only wizards, and they would only invite you to the guild if you were a wizard. They have received some nerfs recently, the wizard class, but overall the community's kind of torn about what to do with this class. It's been taking over PvP for a long time now. I could talk about, you know, the other type of, the rest of the class balance, but that was one that kind of just sticks out in this game. It is a good sign, however, that they are kind of constantly trying to balance these classes. There are updates where, you know, there's buffs and nerfs, and so they're kind of on top of things, but really it seems like the wizard issue has not been resolved for a very long time. Major problem in this game. Guys, I have to admit, there is a lack of endgame content. There is very little endgame content besides grinding. Now, to be clear, that might not bother some people, but I'm sure it bothers a lot of people. Some people like to just chill and they grind out mobs. That is what I mean by grinding, is fighting the same mobs over and over again for hours and hours and collecting the loot that drops. However, those people should also know that many MMORPG players detest grinding, myself included. I'm not talking about grinding for some goal like a mount or title and then you never need to do it again. No, I mean the entire endgame is grinding. Once you grind at a certain area and you can afford to buy better gear, you buy the better gear, and your next goal is to grind in the next area that will give you more silver per hour so that you can buy the better gear again. And then the cycle continues and you grind and you grind. If you get sick of the PvE grinding, then you can do professions. Well, you see, the problem with some of the professions are they also include grinding, doing the same thing again and again and again, and the cycle continues until you until you don't even realize you haven't gone outside in 6 months, and you barely even made a dent in your progress, or even if you made some progress, you know, I mean, was it worth it, right? I mean, there are, you know, so in terms of other endgame content, there are no dungeons in this game. So to be fair, a dungeon, quote-unquote dungeon, was just released for the first time this past July, called, I think, Ataraxion or something, but ever since the game's release in 2014, there have been no dungeons and no raid content. There are no traditional raids like there are in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV or any other MMORPG. The release of this new dungeon does give me some hope going forward about them making more endgame content besides new grind zones, but it still stands that this game is very grind heavy, and a lot of people just don't like doing repetitive tasks over and over again. And I know the BDO content creators, I've watched them, I've listened to them, they don't like it either. They say if you just keep grinding, you're going to burn yourself out. The way to prevent the burnout is to do a little bit of grinding and then go do something else, and come back and grind some more. But you shouldn't have to do that. You should be doing something that's fun, you know, something that's enjoyable, something that you look forward to, not doing grinding as a job. You know, when a game becomes a job, it's not a game anymore. So now you may be thinking, well, with such a lack of endgame content, what do people actually do at endgame? Well, most people... Sorry, I took a sip of water. Most people, not everyone, but most people consider gearing up their character for PvP as the true endgame of BDO. Now this means months and months, potentially years of grinding, and God knows how much money, like real life money, to be able to afford the best gear. Now to be fair, if you don't want to go through that, there is a PvP mode in the game where you play as a trial character and you're given access to quote-unquote high-level gear for free. And I mean, it is enough to get by in PvP because mostly everyone else is wearing the same thing, except for those players who've been playing for years, like I said, who will just always have better gear than you. Now, if the endgame of BDO is PvP, you know, as we've assumed at this point, because I don't see anything else otherwise, then PvP should be pretty fun, right? I mean, if that's the endgame, well, there comes the problem. Remember how I talked about the CC abilities and the defensive moves? Well, PvP in BDO boils down to this. Who can grab or grapple the other player first? There's a time spent doing this dance where you try to juke the other player into wasting their CC, their stun, their grab, so that you can land your CC and combo them. Once you grab someone, you knock them down into the ground, and you unleash a combo, and you win. The fight is settled in one swift move 90% of the time, and there is a very, very short time to live. It's settled in an instant almost. And that if your gear is similar. Now, if your gear is very different, if there's a massive discrepancy in your gear level compared to someone else, you have no chance. No matter what, you have no chance against that player. But like I said, in the PvP trial mode, most people are around the same gear score, and so whoever grabs the other person first, they win. In addition to this, the most efficient way to play PvP is to reduce your game settings to the lowest possible graphics in order to optimize FPS. Now, the sheer difference between the highest and lowest settings in this game is staggering, to say the least. The PvP settings, so to speak, will make it appear as if you're playing a PlayStation 1 game from the 1990s. I seriously think some of those games look better than BDO in its lowest settings. And this irritates me because of how beautiful the game potentially could be. And it's reduced to this garbage because FPS issues ruin the experience otherwise. This game has such potential to be beautiful, and you paid, you know, for your skins to so they can look at your character, and you customize your character so they look a certain way, and the environment, and you kind of play the whole game, and it looked so beautiful, and then you get to PvP and you have to just turn down your settings to the worst possible quality, and then it doesn't even look like you're playing the same game anymore. You can now to be fair, you can play PvP with high graphics settings if you want, but just know you'll be at a massive disadvantage compared to players who are playing at the lowest settings and optimal FPS. And yes, then we come to one of the largest problems in this game. VSync and server lag. Input lag, oh yes, you rush in to grab the opponent and bam, they teleported to your left, or your right, or behind you. Or they grabbed you first even though your screen showed something different. Yes, even in the lowest setting graphics and high frames per second, now you're dead. And that's when the game will tilt you. That's when the game will tilt you because you pressed a button and it didn't register. You thought the character was in front of you, on your screen they were, and a second later something is happening to you, you have no idea why, and now you're dead. That's when you'll tilt. And you deserve to tilt because the game sucks for that. It does. It does. Overall the game is good, but this aspect is awful. This aspect makes you not want to play. And so you think to yourself, surely there must be, you know, some PvP game modes which are fun to play at least, right? And that's where you'd be wrong. So here are the current PvP modes. There is a large open training battlefield area. There are players who randomly fight other players here. There are no rules at all. It is a free-for-all. If a player is 1v1ing someone else, another player can just jump in and ruin it and start killing them both, or, you know, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just a giant, massive free-for-all. Then there is the red battlefield. This is a 30 versus 30 red versus blue team type of thing. The same boring map over and over again. Nothing special here. Massive VSync and server lag issues. Node wars. You join a guild and think, oh man, this is going to be awesome. We're going to war for this node. But actually no one really cares about the node. We just want an excuse to do some PvP. Then you get there. This is 25 versus 25, essentially. 25 players on our side, 25 on their side. There is the main attack team, which consists of a giant ball of players on your side. A giant ball, like on the map, essentially, or your group heading towards a certain region. Some players play the flex position where they try to gank and get some kills. Other roles exist too. But the main point being this, the problem. A massive wave of players on both sides come rushing in out of nowhere and the game can barely function correctly. It's a massive clusterfuck and you die instantly to a gang of 20 wizards casting AoEs. To be honest, I've never really liked large-scale PvP in games, but this game in particularly does it a disservice because of the VSync, the server lag, the input error. You don't even know how you died most of the time. And for large-scale PvP, I've always found it boring. And I've never really felt like what I did made that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. I'd much rather have, like, small-scale PvP, 3v3, 5v5 or something. But that doesn't exist in this game. Alright, next mode, open world PvP. Barely even happens, but if you're grinding somewhere and you think that's your grind spot and someone else has better gear than you, well, good luck trying to fight that player because they're going to kill you no matter how good you think you are. And that's it. There are no more PvP modes. There is a yearly tournament known as the Arena of Arsha, in which there's actually enjoyable content to watch because it's strictly 1v1. I wish they would allow us to queue for 1v1 matches like in other games. There is no way to queue for a small 5v5 match or a 3v3 or any other small-scale PvP match. There is no Capture the Flag, there is no King of the Hill like Arathi Basin from World of Warcraft or like Final Fantasy XIV. There is no ranking system like Bronze, Silver, Gold, or Diamond. This game needs small-scale PvP and a ranking system, and it really needs to fix the VSync server input lag issue to have a future. Also, there are tier lists when it comes to PvP, class tier lists. So you might think Class A wins over Class B, but gear is king in the open world. It is true that your actual skill matters in the game, but not as much as a gear difference. And the main way to obtain that gear is to grind the same mobs endlessly, or do life skilling, fishing, chopping down trees, gathering meat, selling it on the market, repeat, rinse and repeat. Therein lies the problem for me. I couldn't do it anymore. I can't keep grinding the same thing over and over again. It's become so monotonous with no endgame in sight. The lackluster PvP is just not enough for me to continue. I can't keep grinding without any real goal. And now we move on to the ugly. And oh boy, does Black Desert Online have some ugly in it. Enhancing items in this game has got to be one of the most cancer aspects of this game. There are different levels of gear, Pry, Duo, Tri, Tet, and Pen. Levels 1 through 5 respectively, with 5 or Penta being the best. Your items can increase from rank from 1 through 5 essentially. In order to enhance something, you need a copy of the original item plus your current item. So, imagine getting to Tet, level 4 of an item and then trying to enhance it to level 5 with a maximum shot of success of about 10% or so. And if you fail, you lose both items. That's exactly what happens when you try to level up accessories in this game. You heard me right. You worked hard for that Tet. item that you may have spent months grinding for. And now you're trying to get it to that final level, to get it to that pen, that penta, that end game accessory. And you roll the dice. Maybe you try to increase your chances to 30% or 40% success rate or 50%, and you fail. For armor and weapons, however, so accessories, you lose both items. For armor and weapons, you don't lose both items. However, each time you fail an enhancement, you have to pay upwards of millions and millions in order to recover from the losses. You basically play the lottery with your progress. I saw a comment by someone who was talking about the enhancement system, and it is the following. Who the fuck wants to grind for 3 months and then piss it all away in enhancement failures in 15 minutes? That shit ain't fun. It's demotivating as fuck. I agree. Now some people say, you don't need to enhance, just buy it off the marketplace. Well, the fact remains that someone out there has to enhance the gears, otherwise it wouldn't exist. And what happens when there's nothing in the market and you want to upgrade to the next gear? What happens when you get to that level? The truth is, the enhancement system sucks in this game. It fucking sucks. Now, advice for new players. It is a viable alternative to just buy things off the marketplace, but that's not an excuse for this god-awful enhancement system. Stop using that excuse. The enhancement system sucks, and you need to admit it. The cash shop. Oh my lord. Where do I even begin? Imagine paying for inventory space when the game doesn't give you enough to begin with. Imagine paying for weight, a weight limit, so that you can carry more items because the game didn't give you enough. It's almost like they said, oh, you have more inventory space? Thanks for the $20, but, that's too bad. It looks like you don't have the weight carrying capacity now, so if you can please purchase it in the store for another $20 or $30, that would be nice, yeah. And, you want access to repairing your gear while you're out doing those long grinds in the middle of bumfuck nowhere? Oh man, that's too bad. Looks like the only option is to buy our $50 tent in our cash shop. You heard me right. There is no cheaper option. You have to buy the $50 tent. You enter the tent, and you can repair your items wherever you want. And there's also scroll buffs that will make you a little bit stronger. And there are buffs for life skilling with the tent. Yeah, man, that's unfortunate. It's not like they designed the game that way on purpose so that they can milk the players dry. And do you like making money by life skilling perchance? Well, I mean, if you read anything about it, you must have heard of the tier 4 hedgehog pet from the cash shop that can double, sometimes triple your profits per hour. Now, you don't have to buy it, right? You just make way less money per hour than someone who does, right? And if you value your time, then you probably should buy it, right? I mean, that's another $30, so how about we just keep milking these players? Oh man, looks like your character looks like shit by default in comparison to other players who bought cash shop skins. Guess the only option is to show off our $30 to $40 skins to players in our cash shop. Now look, this one I will admit, I don't mind too much because other games have the same business practice. I wouldn't mind that much if this game just had skins in the cash shop, because then at least it would be tolerable. Like take League of Legends for example, the game is free, and so is Black Desert Online to install, and they make all their money off of their skins and other small microtransactions. But in Black Desert Online, the new skins cost upwards of $40. Really? With all the other vile, greedy shit that you guys pull off, you're gonna start charging that much? My god. Now, wait a minute. Life skilling, I didn't even mention. Energy. You guys don't know about the energy system. For those of you who don't know, every single task that you do while life skilling consumes energy. You have a certain amount of energy per day. And you could replenish that energy to keep skilling And so the energy that you have in general for most players, around 200 to 300, 400 for some people who want to go hard, 500 for those who are real sweaty. That energy will last you about an hour, maybe 2 hours max. Now you could replenish that energy to keep skilling if you want, but you know the way to replenish it, right? You know what I'm gonna say. You have to pay for the energy potions from the cash shop. Of course, you don't have to buy it. You'll just be at a huge disadvantage compared to other players who do. And there is more, so much more that I have yet to even touch on when it comes to this exploitative, manipulative, greedy, and downright disgusting cash shop in this game. God, fuck these developers for making this cash shop. I respect them for making good combat system, fun gameplay, but this cash shop, no one should support this. I can't say I regret my time. To conclude, I can't say I completely regret my time within the game, because the combat and some of my memories were honestly great. Like that first time I went out to go fight Vel, the weekly world boss, I had a fun time, but the money I spent wasn't worth it. I think this game has huge potential. It really needs a PvP overhaul and an update to create more interesting small-scale PvP like 5v5 or 3v3 or 1v1 and allow us to queue up for matches. There should also be rankings like bronze, silver, gold. Give us something to strive for. Give us unique mounts and awards and titles or something if we achieve higher rank, and then let us queue up for something like that. Let us have a goal. That alone would have kept me playing. And there needs to be something done about the server lag and the VSync issues and the input lag and players teleporting around and all that bullshit. No more of that. Fix your fucking game. Overall, this game, in my opinion, is about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. And I've played almost 1,000 hours. And now I know there are some BDO fanboys who are going to be salty about that, but I don't care, because I'm right. If you take an objective look at this game, it needs work. It's good. It has a lot of great features that make it good, but it needs work. It needs work. And to all the new players, my advice is to avoid the cash shop like the plague, no matter how left behind you feel compared to other players. Now that concludes this video. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think about Black Desert Online and how it can improve. Please consider liking the video and subscribing for more content. Till next time, peace. Thank you.